Now, moving on to the next game, Wales versus Scotland, 35-7. What a game that was. Wales were completely dismantled and had quite a rather humiliating game, if I may. The Dodie Wire Award, I'm sorry, Matt. The Dodie Wire Award, the trophy becomes a very special moment for Scotland. What do you guys think?
Do you want to lead this one?
Not really. It was a disappointing Welsh performance. Scotland, in fairness, played really well. The most disappointing thing from a Welsh point of view is that it was exactly the same mistakes as we made last week. We gave away 19 penalties overall. You can't afford to do that at international level. But we missed line-outs. We were inaccurate when we needed to be accurate. And that was the difference between the two teams. And with the way Finn Russell played in the second half, Scotland were really impressive. So disappointing, really disappointing from a Welsh point of view. But hats off to Scotland. They played really well.
I think the disappointing thing is that Gatland made the changes that I think the public were calling for, and nothing happened. Nothing changed. It wasn't a better performance. It was probably slightly worse performance, in all honesty. And that will, this week he's going to be scratching his head, going, what am I going to do this week, or in a fortnight's time. But for Scotland, they look like a team that's full of confidence, enjoying their rugby. They're using their forwards well. Their backs to get into the game. Finn Russell's literally connecting the two. The first half, I don't think Finn had his best game, but then the second half, he just came alive. The offload for the try out the back was just class, and it just showed, how good he can be. And he's definitely got to be one of the top tens especially in the Northern Hemisphere at the moment.
Sorry, and that momentum from the first game as well. Really, you could see they were a team playing with confidence.
Yeah.
And that first week in the Six Nations is just so important.
Yeah.
Fair play to Scotland. They played really well.
And especially after watching Ireland-France game, and it's literally, that's not the same tempo. It's pretty much like some would have called like schoolboy level or amateur level game that we witnessed.
That's harsh.
Almost like yawning, but thanks to Finn Russell's magic, kept the people watching to the screens.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a difference between the top two, France and Ireland at the moment, compared to the rest. But I said in week one of the show, it's great to see a Six Nations where it's very competitive.
Yeah.
You couldn't call the positions teams are going to finish in, and that's what you want. You want, especially 6 months out from a World Cup, you want these teams to be competitive. You want it to be going into them not knowing who's going to win. And the fact that Scotland and Italy have both stepped up this year is great for the game.
And what's going to be really exciting is actually there's going to be some strong Northern Hemisphere teams going into that World Cup. So this Six Nations is a perfect warm-up for that.
Yeah, I mean, the World Cup, you can't call it. You really can't call it. I mean, New Zealand, obviously, very, very strong, but not as strong as they have been in previous years. Australia is struggling a little bit. South Africa, obviously, they're going to be a dominant force. But the Northern Hemisphere teams are looking very good. And if England, Scotland, Italy can fix the little errors they've got, they are going to be contenders. They are going to be up there. And then you also got the Pacific Island teams as well. They're always going to be a tough team to play against. So the World Cup's going to be exciting, but right now it's Six Nations, and it's shaped up to be a really good championship.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, even Namibia beat much fancied Fiji last time, so there's so many upsets. But don't forget Asia Rugby and Japan. We are the dark horses.
Yeah.
Now, Dan Biggar was fuming on Rio De's pass inside the 22 metres. It's not really a great way to motivate the youth of young players. What's your guys' take on that?
I would have been fuming as well. I mean, he inside his 22, chucked an absolute stink of a pass.
But it's Dan's fault. He put his both feet. It's a knock-on.
Yeah. To be fair, look, I think looking back,
all the wingers call that, eh?
Yeah, looking back, you, as a winger, you're probably kicking at yourself rather than throwing that sort of pass in the 22 with the defence coming up on you. I think there was a lot of frustration at that point. I don't think they'd scored a try at that point. So, there's a lot of pressure on Wales right now. The Welsh public are not kind, especially when things are going bad. So they'll be feeling that media pressure, they'll be feeling the public pressure. Obviously, new coach is under pressure already. They're in a tough spot at the moment, Wales, and they need to find something. But them little mistakes is what's killing their game. It's killing their flow. If they can't exit correctly out there in 22, they're just going to be under pressure the whole game. So these are the fixes they've got to make happen very, very quickly now.
And it wasn't a great look when Bigger had a go, but he is a player that wears his heart on his sleeve, and he was evidently very frustrated at that. But as Tom said, those are completely the little errors that the Wales have got to get rid of. They've got to be more accurate. They've got to be more sort of tuned into each other, and they've got to make the right decisions. That wasn't the best decision by Dyer to pass to Bigger in the first place. You know, Bigger shouldn't have reacted in the way he did. However, he was very frustrated.
International rugby as well, it is so high pressure, and the small mistakes is what these teams... Wales, England, Ireland, Scotland, Italy, they're not a million miles away from each other in terms of their quality of player, but it's the accuracy is what will change the game.
If Dyer had been able to catch that ball just before half-time and score, Wales would have gone into half-time in the lead. Could have changed the game completely on its head. But it is those little things that make a difference, and unfortunately for Wales, those little things continue to happen. You've got to find some way of eradicating it. Easier said than done. Going into the next game against England, who just now had a really strong win against Italy, it's going to be even harder for Wales.
Maybe that pass that I could have scored from Dan, because it's pretty much no-look twist pass. Do you think that it is the after effect of the previous incidents? Is there any emotional intelligence should be played?
I don't necessarily think so, because it was a split-second decision. It would have been better if Dan Bigger had taken it in front of him. But, again, easier said than done. And, potentially Dyer could have caught it. It wasn't an easy catch, but that would have made a massive difference potentially to the game as a whole.
Liam Williams conceding another yellow card, making the game 2-2. Yes, he's a Lion and certainly a legend, but do you think he's turning out to be a bit of a liability?
Liam Williams is a quality player, both at club and international. He has proven, like you say, he's a British Lion. But it's a tough one. We've already mentioned Wales as a squad are going through a tough time.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what level you've played at, whether you've played British Lions, international, the pressure is on. You make mistakes. You do have moments of madness, I suppose, and you're not as accurate. And I think that's just affecting the whole squad.
And in the press conference afterwards, both Warren Gatland and Ken Owen said that they were going to be very honest with each other after the game, and I think this is exactly the sort of thing that they'll be talking about. Liam Williams does not have the best record in terms of sort of getting yellow carded, so it will be something that he'll need to work on. But again, he's 100% a player. He puts his body on the line. Occasionally, that's going to go wrong. So it is a very fine line between doing some really good stuff and making that slightly wrong decision and actually getting a yellow card. But potentially, that is something that he will need to work on, because he's had a number of yellow cards over the last few years for Wales.
Yeah, I don't know whether you remember when he played against Lions, there was a 2v1 situation where Josh Adams could have easily offloaded Lions, could have scored a try. But Liam is certainly a Lion. He is pretty much like out of forms, perhaps. But where does the Welsh depth relies in, Mark?
That's probably where we're not sure where we are at the minute. We don't know exactly where our depth is. Lewis Roux-Zammit has got to come back in when he is fit. He played fullback in one of the autumn internationals, and he actually fitted in very well there. So he may well be an option. Lee Halfpenny, when he's fit again, might be that fullback option. But yeah, there are a few youngsters still to blood, but when that is going to happen now, because we're in a hole without a doubt. So how you play that to be able to blood these youngsters, it's not an easy call.
A player for me that's been underused is George North.
Yeah.
I mean, I've barely seen him in these games at the moment. And this is a player that a couple of years ago was, tearing up the Championship. He's a British Lion. He was scoring unbelievable tries in the wide channels. And you just don't see him in the games at the moment. And it's such a shame because a player like that, given time and space on the ball, we've seen what Van der Merwe's doing for Scotland. He's exactly the same sort of player. And we're just not getting any ball in hand. So I think something needs to happen in that area of the pitch, or then positional changes need to be made.
And on Scrum 5 on Sunday night, there was some great analysis that Sean Holly did, looking at the Welsh backline, and actually we didn't get more than 2 phases out at all. And so the outside backs are working in no space whatsoever. And when you look at what the other teams were able to do to create that space, Wales are just not doing that at the moment. So we need to be able to create more space out wide, and that's when a player like George North can really come into his own.
Yeah, and on paper, Wales' backline is probably one of the most exciting out there.
Yeah.
Like, they've got some unbelievable players in their team, but they're just not playing with confidence, or they're not getting the space or the time on the ball. Look, the positive thing for Wales, they've got the players there. They have got the players. They have got the strength in depth. But Warren now needs to get the best out of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll talk about Finn Russell on our analysis, but he was simply magical. Where do you rate him at the Worlds? He's either number 1 fly half right now.
Oh, he's definitely got to be in the top 3, top 4 fly halves in world rugby. When he's on his game, he's different level. He is fantastic. When he's off his game, he can be a bit of a liability. In that first half, he didn't have his best game.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a fact. In the second half, though, he came alive, and he's kicking well. His attacking kicks were on point. His kicking out to touch was great, and then his offloading ability, breaking that tackle. He takes the defence on every time, so you don't know if he's going to run it or he's going to pass it. His deception's fantastic, and he's always looking for that support player as well.
He just reads the game so well, doesn't he? Yeah. And he sees where gaps are, both close by, but his vision to see those sort of kicks to the wingers, etc., are just really, really spot on.
The play, Finn Russell, it's pretty much like Quade Cooper's or your mate Danny Cipriani's style, isn't it?
Yeah.
Although despite the fact Finn is still starting, although he had some issues with Townsend, the coach. But talking about other two...
I mean, in terms of you're right though, in terms of his attacking and his flair, he has all the strengths of a Danny Cipriani, of a Quade Cooper, but he also has the pragmatic approach of someone like a Farrell. So,
yeah.
And that's the thing for defences, you don't know what you're going to get. So you don't know, is he going to kick it? As a back 3 player, when you always watch the fly half. You always see where his position is. So you drop back in the park. You drop back to the backfield, thinking you're going to receive a kick, and the next thing you know, he's thrown a missed ball, and you've got you got to get back up. You can never ever read him, and that's how, if I was still playing and playing against someone like Finn, it'd be a nightmare because you just cannot get your positioning right, and that's how he creates all these spaces.
And a great example with that was when Liam Williams was off. And the Scottish attack were able to draw the Welsh defence in, which left the winger out wide, and he just saw that, got the ball out, and it ended up being an easy try for Scotland.
He doesn't telegraph anything, does he?
No.
So even the crossfield kicks, you don't see it happening, and he would just do it on the run, and it's just like, a lot of fly halves you can read about.
Yeah, you know it's going to come.
Yeah, you see their eyes, the way they shape their body, but with him, you just don't know what's going to happen
Nothing
next.
is premeditated.
Yeah.
Yep.